Hello everyone, my name is Yulia and I am from Kojic team. Today in this tutorial we will be working with manipulating data from Kojic applications. It is a typical situation when you need to export or access the data from your apps, and we have three ways about how to do it. The first one is to export your data as an Excel files. The second option is to access your data using the API, and the third option is to manipulate your data using code blocks. Let's try to test all these options in our application. As you can see, I have already created an application which is a copy of a simplified Northwind database sample from Microsoft, and here we have the forms to store the data about the addresses, customers, products, shippers, suppliers for some shop. And if we will open our application, we will see that we have already stored some instances of address. We also have a collection of suppliers and customers, and in case we need to export this data into Excel files, what we can do, we can use our basic default route, which is called export, adding it to our application alias in the address bar, and clicking on address, we are now redirected to the export managing page. Here, as you can see, you can select different data types you need to export data for, and also we have an option to export all the translations. It is useful when you have a multi-language application, and if we'll select this option, all the files will have different pages for each language translated. Let's select some data types from our application and try to export the data. Let's select the product, orders, and customers, for example, and click on the export button. As you can see, a zip file with all these files has been downloaded. When we will open the folder with all our Excel files, we can try to open some of them to see how does it look in our Excel table. And now when it is launched and opened, as you can see, all the data instances from our application are stored in the file. So this is one of the ways how you can export the data from your application.
There is also a bit more easier way of how to download the data of one specific data type. You can simply go to the page with a table of your collection, and in this drop-down list you can select export option, and then you will have an Excel file downloaded with all the instances of this data type. Also, in case you need to download only some specific instances, you can select them, and out here we have an option to export them to the CSV file or to the Excel file. As you can see, we have a following CSV file, and only the selected instances are downloaded into this file.
And now let's go on with accessing data with API, as each application created in Kojic Builder has automatically generated REST API, which can be called as it is described in the documentation. So if we'll open it, we can see that we can use different requests from our API. So for example, we need to get the data about some instance. We can use this pattern of a request to our data type. So let's open our application and also open some instance, for example, the data type address instance. And now let's try to use this pattern to get the data about this instance. So what we need to do, we need to specify the API route out here. Also specify the entity. This will be a type reference in our case, and also the next in our pattern is the type ID and also the instance ID. And now entering this in the address bar, we get a JSON with data about this instance of the address data type. And also to get the data from our application in a JSON format, we can use all the other requests from our API. But the third way to manipulate our data is using code blocks. By default, Kojic Builder doesn't expect the user to write the direct SQL commands as a native code. Instead, we use a high-level framework to interact with databases management systems. Before we'll start using existing functionality for application, let me firstly introduce you the basic organization of our databases. For each application created in Kojic Builder, there is a single separate relational database. As you can see, here we have the list of all the databases, and this one is for our application. Also, for each data type defined in the application, we have a corresponding separate table, and by default, it is named like entity and the ID of a data type. But let's have a look. If for our application, we have already edited the system name, and if we edit it, it is renamed in the database also. So let's try to find out our order table, and here it is. Here, as you can see, there is a shipper, there is also a product table, there is also an order table. So in case we need to have some specific name for your table and data type in database, you can also change the system name in your application. Let's try, for example, to rename some data type. It could be the shipper, and let's now give it a name shipper1. And when we update and publish our application, and then we'll go to our database, we will have a change. And now, going to our database management, we can see that our table is now renamed and it is a shipper1. And the only important thing I also need to mention is that when you are selecting a new name for your data type, you should be very careful and don't use any words that should be SQL reserved words. For example, like order. It is also used in the order by clause, and you should be very careful while selecting which name to edit for a system name for some data type. And now let's go on to the third option of data manipulating in Kojic App Builder. This is basically using the code blocks to reproduce some access or modifying operations on your data. Let's try to create a new page in our application to test if we can reproduce some basic SQL commands with using the code blocks. For this, we create a new page in our app. Let's call this page the management page. And on this page, let's start with three basic operations in SQL, which are insert, delete, and update. So we add three buttons on our form to then add an action, which will be the reproducing commands from SQL. So the first one will stand for the insert command. The second one will be for the update command. And the third one for delete. And now let's start with creating an action reproducing the inserting query and called it insert. Now we are redirected to the code block editor. So let's try to insert a new product category into the table with following data type. For this, first of all, we create a value of this type. This is a product category data type. So we create a new variable of this type. Let's call it, for example, fruits. Now what we need to do, we need to set some values for this fruits instance, for example, the category name. So we set the category name fruits as well. And now we're ready to insert this value into our table. To do this in the code blocks, we have a special code block which is called create. So what we do, we use this block and set as a parameter our fruit variable, and only after using this block our fruits variable will be added into the table with all the instances of product categories data type. So let's try to save our newly created function and now publish our application to see if we now have this category in our table. And now, as soon as our application has been successfully published, we can open our app, go to the management page, and here clicking on the insert button, let's check if the category has been added. And here it is, our fruits product category is now in a table. Great, let's go on with the next button, which is update. And for the update action, let's imagine the situation when, for example, going to the product page, we see that in our table, some of the products have 0 available units, but they are still not checked as a discontinued one. So for this, let's go back to our page And to now create an action for our second button, which was to update. And now we will fix our situation updating our table with this action. So what we need to do in this function is to iterate through the whole list of products, find out those which have a value of available units equal to 0, and then mark those products as discontinued. For this, what we use is a for each block, which will iterate for each product in the stream of the whole product data type instances. So we need to find out this data type. So we iterate through the whole block, and for each product in this stream, in case if our product's available units is equal to 0, so we compare this value to the 0 value, and in case if it is equal to 0, what we do, we set our product discontinued value equal to true. And then after that we use an update operation block and update our product. So now let's try to save and publish application to see if this will work properly. So opening our application and going to the product page, as we can see, we have two products which have 0 available units, but they are not marked up as a discontinued. And now going to our management page and clicking on our special update button, we go back to the products list, and now these products are marked up as discontinued. But what if we don't need to store the products which are discontinued? For this, let's use our deleting button. So we go back to our management page and find out our third button to delete. And now let's create an action for it. And now we are redirected to the code block editor. And in this function, we again need to iterate through the whole product list to find out the discontinued ones. So we again use the for each block to check our condition for all products. We again need a stream of our product data type. So we create our product data type. We iterate through the whole list, and then we need to check out if our product's value of discontinued field is true. So we compare our discontinued field with true value. And if so, we need to delete this product from our list. So we use a special delete code block and get our product parameter to deleting. Let's now save and check if all of the discontinued products will be deleted from our table. So now let's reload our application and go to our management page, and now click on our delete button. Now going to the product page, as you can see, all the products which were marked as discontinued are now deleted. But this delete wasn't just like a simple drop from a table, because if you click on a show deleted, as you can see, we have all the products again in our table but marked as red ones. And the same is in our database table, because these product values are still saved but with another meta object state. And the reason is that if in your application is enabled the function to track the history, then clicking on a deleted value, you will find out all the history of modifying this instance. Therefore, you should be careful with using deleting, and also you can always use our option to restore or clone your value from deleted list. These were the most basic operations with data from Kojic applications. In case you need some more advanced operations, they will be reviewed in the next part of this tutorial. Thanks for watching. Bye.